Hello, welcome to the podcast, Human Rights in America, a Revolutionary Mindset. I am your host, Sue Young. Remember, you can listen to this podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and Amazon Music. Like, listen, share, subscribe, and repeat. Welcome to episode 6. So, as a review, episode 5 featured 2 of the 4 obstacles preventing the U.S. from ratifying the Convention on the Rights of a Child, CRC for short. In that episode, I talked about child marriage, which requires a minimum age of 18, and corporal punishment, where all the states have not been able to meet the international standard, because each state allows corporal punishment in school and/or at home. Today, we will finish up CRC identifying 2 other obstacles preventing the United States from ratifying this treaty, a treaty that every other country on this planet has signed. Before I published episode 5, I went on a mission trip to the Dominican Republic. It has to do with kids. I had never been on a mission trip. Who knew that the same country with Punta Cana has sugarcane plantations called bateys, where they pay workers $4 a week for 8 to 10-hour shifts. These are sugarcane companies that recruit Haitian refugees to come and work the fields. Their families are given a structure, a home, but I really didn't see inside the homes. We know that it's a structure that looks like a home, but these structures may or may not have electricity or water. And any children born in these bateys in the DR do not get citizenship. So these kids are not Haitian, nor are they Dominican. And if the father becomes sick, hasta la vista, because they basically take him back to the Haitian border and say good luck. Thank goodness for Bold Hope and their employees for doing the hard work on the ground. And my mission team was awesome. So I had to re-listen to episode 5. Listening to my voice is, but what I heard was restraint. I tried to act like a reporter on TV and just give you the facts and try not to be influenced by what I was telling you. But yes, it was triggering for me. In America, between 2000 and 2018, over 250,000 child marriages were allowed. Some of them as young as 10 years old. So let's be real. Why, when, and how should a 10-year-old ever marry a grown man in this America? Here, you marry the kid or you go to jail for sexual abuse. And yes, I specifically state only a grown man because they found more often than not, these were girls marrying grown men. Delaware is the only state in this United States that has outlawed child marriages. So again, I believe that America should be the leader in all of human rights, which includes the child. We should be the leaders showing the world how to treat children, but we're not. So how do we change our thought? It starts with you, the individual, is not okay. Not anymore. So let's see. I kind of got off track with that. But again, the reason why we have not been able to ratify the treaty is because we don't have any federal law And that's troublesome to me. Children are little humans. There has to be something. So today we're going to address child labor and juvenile justice. I told you in the last episode that the shenanigans of Louisiana are what prompted me to talk about the Convention on the Rights of a Child. I was going to bypass it because surely everyone cares about children, right? So the House committee voted to repeal a law requiring employers to give child workers paid lunch. Pundits believe that the move was motivated by the Louisiana governor's directive to make his state more friendly for businesses. Currently in Louisiana, children get paid 1/2 hour for lunch if they work 5 hours. So this first-term representative who owns several Smoothie Kings says that the children want to work 5 hours straight. But what he's not saying is that the children didn't say that they didn't want to get paid for that half an hour lunch. They just wanted to work straight 5 hours. So you could see that. Like, I don't want to work 2 hours and then be forced to take a half-hour lunch, perhaps in a closet, and then go back to work for 2.5 hours. So this is the way he thinks his state is going to become more business friendly if they cut out a half an hour paid lunch. I don't know exactly what was going on, but when I read that article, I said, well, I got to talk about children's rights. If you've ever been to New Orleans, there is a lot of money in Louisiana. And these kids that are working 5 hours straight are not the rich people. So let's talk about child labor. Child labor is defined as work that deprives children of their childhood, their potential, and their dignity. Whether or not forms of work can be called child labor depends on the child's age, the type of hours that were performed, and the conditions under which it is performed. The international standards set by the CRC say that the minimum age for employment should be 15, and that the minimum age for hazardous work should be 18. In the U.S., child provisions in the Fair Labor Standards Act align with those international standards, yet these laws explicitly exempt agriculture work, which is the most dangerous industry. For child workers on a family farm, there is no minimum age. Under the age of 12, children may be employed outside of school hours with parental consent. At age 14, minors can work outside of school hours in an agricultural occupation, except those deemed too dangerous. Full-time employment of 16 and 17-year-olds are allowed to work in hazardous conditions in agriculture and other industries. Without federal leadership to correct the child rights violations, child laborers depend on state action. A state can always exceed federal standards, but the international standards state that the minimum age for employment should be 15, and for hazardous material, the age should be 18. Thus, almost all of the states are out of compliance. The next category, according to the study, to see whether or not the United States can actually meet the standards for the treaty, is juvenile justice. Juvenile justice is another category for which states were scored. The international standards set by the CRC discuss the minimum age of juvenile justice. For example, trying juvenile children as adults for life sentences without parole. Specifically, the CRC states The minimum age of a juvenile jurisdiction should be at least 14. Nation state should establish a minimum age below which children shall not have the capacity to infringe on the penal law. They recommend 14, but they encourage the age of 16. The international standard states that no child should be tried as an adult in the criminal justice system, no matter what the offense. And lastly, the juvenile life without parole sentences should be prohibited. At the time that this treaty first came up, which was 1989, several states permitted the execution and life imprisonment of juvenile offenders. However, the landmark decision by the Supreme Court in 2005 called Roper v. Simmons declared juvenile executions to be unconstitutional as cruel and unusual punishment. In 2012, a case called Miller v. Alabama, the court held that mandatory sentences of life without the possibility of parole are unconstitutional for juvenile offenders. I didn't check that. I didn't check the status of those cases, but this was 2024 study, so I assume it's still good law. You can fact check me on these things by going to the website www.hrw.org. And you may need to include how do states measure up child rights. To date, the United States has ratified 2 of the optional protocols to the convention. The optional protocol on the involvement of children in armed conflict and the optional protocol on the sale of children, child prostitution, and child pornography. Optional protocols, but somehow we still allow child marriages. Well, I believe that the United States should lead the world in protecting children, period. But we don't. We say that we value life, the excuse for overturning Roe v. Wade, but instead we have allowed 250,000 girls to marry adult men. Sure, they weren't all 10 years old, but one 10-year-old is too many. Look in the face of your 10-year-old and you tell me if they're ready for marriage and or ready to handle the consequences of a divorce. Can they even spell marriage at that age? We're walking both sides of the line, prosecuting some as sexual offenders, but legalizing the right to marry victims. I am confused and disappointed. So, this is the United States in 2024. We need some help. Without federal laws that dictate that 50 states can and do have different laws. So let's go back to our friend Louisiana. Louisiana has no laws against corporal punishment. The average age for marriage is 16. And Louisiana reinforces the Fair Labor Standards Act, allowing minors who are 16 and 17 to work in any hazardous environment. Minors who are 14 and 15 can work in any hazardous condition if participating in a work-study program. Lastly, minors of any age can work in hazardous conditions if working on a farm owned by their parents. The CRC has 54 articles. I told you earlier that I was not going to read all 54 articles, but I'll read just a few. Article 22, children shall be granted special protection and given to a refugee child or a child seeking refugee status. It is the state's obligation to cooperate with competent organizations which provide such protection and assistance. It makes me wonder, is that why Mexican parents sent their children to the U.S. first? Article 23, and this is for my friends with disabled or a child with special needs. A disabled child has the right to special care and education and training to help him or her enjoy a full and decent life and the greatest degree of self-reliance and social integration possible. And lastly, Article 24, Health and Health Services. The child has the right to the highest standard of health and medical care attainable. Special emphasis on the provision of primary and preventive health care. Public health education and education of infant mortality shall be encouraged. States should strive to see that no child is deprived of access to effective health care services. The articles, all 54, they cover child labor, drug abuse, sexual exploitation, and much more. So today, I'll leave you with a quote from Rosa Parks. If I can sit down for freedom, you can stand up for children. Well, that's it for today. Next episode is all about the Constitution. Again, like this podcast, share, subscribe, listen, and repeat. Thanks. Until next time, be revolutionary, be human.